We've heard of doom scrolling, but instead of filling up on scary headlines, doom spending has some piling up credit card balances. To discuss it, we're joined by Inga Timmerman. She's a CPA and assistant professor of accounting and finance at the University of North Florida. Good morning, Inga.
Hello.
We're also joined by Dr. Melissa Chester, economic development program officer at LISC Jacksonville. Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Thankful Thursday, everybody.
Happy Thankful Thursday. And Michelle Hughes, program director of Lutheran Social Services Steps to Success program. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning.
So, Inga, I want to talk about the strategies to avoid doom spending and some of its impacts, but let's just start with the reasons why it's happening. What is going on here?
People are stressed out. They've been stressed out for a long time, but the election just made it worse. And the stress ranges from I just don't know who is going to win, or I don't like who won, and let me just buy some clothes to feel better, to the world is falling apart. I need to buy some gold and run out of here.
Mm.
I saw an interview where one woman kind of explained her overspending. She said it's sort of a thing that made us feel like we had some control over our lives. Dr. Chester, what is this about? How does spending translate as control?
So, naturally, as we know, we are reactive people, right? We're not proactive. And so, this is a way that people are saying, you know what? Even though I can't control what happened, even though my person didn't win, even though these things are going on, this is a small piece that I actually control. I actually am making this decision, and nothing and no one is interfering with it.
And the idea of doom spending is that it's kind of different from what we think of as like retail therapy, Michelle, or impulse buying, but it's sort of specifically linked to this sense almost of like existential dread that people are feeling.
Yes, you're right. Impulsive spending is like it's an unplanned shopping, unplanned purchase. And when people feel helpless and hopeless, they go to what brings them comfort, which is spending.
Yeah. And so these are often kind of luxury items. They're impulsive, as we said, but it's different, Inga, than what we've seen in the past. Generationally, it has a little bit of a different footprint. And it is a representative, I think, of just kind of the evolving internet online life that a lot of people are leading.
That's correct. And I see it. I see a huge difference in my students from 15 years ago and how they approach life and saving and spending and what I see right now. There's this mentality of it's okay to spend now. I don't know what's going to happen in 20 years. I don't need to save for retirement. Social security won't be there, so why bother? Let me go instead and spend my money right now. That's one part of it. And the other part is that we see it on Instagram, we see it on TikTok, we see it everywhere, so it just becomes so much more accessible. Well, before you actually didn't know this exists, now you just scroll through and see 25 things you think you want and buy them.
Yeah. And so this is part of, I mean, it's part and parcel of what we call doom scrolling, right? Because you're on these feeds, Inga, that have a lot of terrible news often, and, especially things about the climate or just, instability around the globe. And there's these ads that are intermingled with this,
Yep.
right? These very effective, targeted, algorithmic, ideal ads. And so you kind of have this feeling of crisis, and then you have this opportunity to offer yourself a little dopamine hit.
Yep. And psychologically, it makes so much sense just to relieve your anxiety with buying something, a little bit of something. Um, there's a lot of psychological research showing that it does give you a dopamine hit. It lasts maybe very short, but it makes you feel better. So in that moment, the emotions take over and you just buy it.
Michelle, there's a meme that was going around last year, something called girl math on TikTok. And it was kind of the idea that, you buy something, for instance, to get free shipping, right? So you buy an extra thing in order to get free shipping. So instead of paying $7, you're going to buy another $25 item. But I saw an article that said if girl math was a buddy comedy, that doom spending is like a horror show because it really is tied up in an emotional deprivation or a sense that you really need something to change the way you're feeling.
And that's correct. Doom spending is just a temporary relief. But, your emotions can lead you into purchasing things just for temporary relief, but it has a long lasting effect. You can purchase something that you'll be paying for the next 3 to 5 years
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. And so, Dr. Chester, I mean, let's talk about this. I mean, we are in a world, as we said, where there's a lot of online living. a lot of aspirational type posts, particularly on sites like Instagram. And so you're looking at maybe your friends or an influencer who's got a luxury hotel that they're staying at, or they're on this really cool vacation, or their house just looks amazing because they've got it all decorated nicely. And so there's this pressure to think that you can kind of find some level of happiness there by buying something similar.
So it goes to what Inga was saying. One, she talked about that mentality. They have this YOLO, you only live once. And so when we're talking about those Gen Zers and millennials, they're not into home ownership. And so they think that they have more discretionary income, right? And so now they're trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? All these little phrases. So here it is. Like you said, I'm seeing my friends doing it. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have a mortgage. So why can't I afford that expensive vacation or that hotel trip? And so it is, again, just this false belief that they have more income than they have because of the ease of credit cards. It's so much different now than it was. I mean, it's so simple to get credit. And so Inga and I were talking before it started. We think that there's a difference between low to moderate income and higher income, but there's not. What we realize is that although you make money, if you spend money, you don't have money, even if you are a millionaire. And so we were actually having that conversation about how it differs between incomes.
Yeah. But I mean, you talk about, spending. Home ownership is really out of reach given the housing prices for so many people. And so you have a
Yes.
generation, more than a generation, of people who really don't have a shot at owning a home anytime soon. And so it is this sort of dis- just a disparity there because they have income that normally young people would be putting into a mortgage or fixing up their house. It seems like discretionary income, but it is sort of facilitated by the fact that they don't have this main economic opportunity that some people in previous generations did.
Yes. And so, but what we typically explain to them is that you are paying a mortgage. When you're paying rent, you're paying mortgage. You're just paying someone else's mortgage, right? And so we have to get out of that thought process that we do have that discretionary income. And so it is more so about, and Michelle and I talk about this often, educating them and making them understand that you can afford a home, maybe not the home that you want to afford, but you can afford a home. And it may not be your dream home. It may just be your first home, right? That first home that you get, and then later on you can get another home. And so I think what they're doing is trying to take control of their lives and saying, okay, like you said, I can't get a home, but I can buy this purse or I can buy these expensive shoes. And those things are temporary fixes, but they're only going to lead ultimately to you putting yourself farther in debt. You're not going to be able to afford a home because your debt to income is going to be so extremely high.
If you're just joining us, we're talking about doom spending, why it happens, and why you should try to avoid it. You can join our conversation by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at wjct.org or reach out on social media. We have a call from Eric in Arlington. Good morning, Eric. Go ahead.
Good morning. I think this problem is especially a big one because no one told, no one told the public, the electorate, before they voted, that if Donald Trump gets in there, he's going to cut the social safety net. So you've got basically all these people on SSI, on food stamps, even the elderly. They have no idea that their monthly income is about to go down because nobody told them that that's what was going to happen. So, and beyond that, a lot of the people that are disabled don't really understand any of that anyway. And so they can't even vote. A lot of them don't vote, or, they don't understand what's at stake. So, what would you say to people who are, on fixed incomes, reliant on the social safety net, that are about to get kicked off? Thanks for taking my call.
Thanks, Eric. Michelle, your thoughts about that?
Okay, so first we try to connect them with the resources that are here in the community in Jacksonville. A lot of resources for seniors and for those that are on low to fixed incomes. And next, we work with our clients to see if they are eligible to supplement their income. We try to find a means for them to supplement their income. There are some that are really afraid, because they're going to lose their SSI or SSDI if I, go to work. So we try to educate them as much as we can on, supplementing their income, because God forbid we don't want to see anyone lose their benefits or lose their home or transportation. But that is a concern. I was at a resource fair just yesterday for seniors, and that is a concern. A lot of our seniors are concerned. First of all, I don't have enough coming in. What am I going to do? What's the next step? I believe I'm going to be put outdoors. And so we try to work with them and educate them as much as we can. Like Dr. Chester stated, education is the key. Let's work on your spending. Let's work on budgeting. Take a look at where your money is going. What are you spending your money on? There are some things that you're going to have to cut out and cut back on in order for you to live comfortably.
And tell us about steps to success. I mean, what is it? Who are your clients, and what issues do they come to you with, looking to solve?
Okay, so Steps to Success is part of a model called the Financial Opportunity Center. There's about 130 that's across the United States. We were brought here about 7 years ago through LISC Jacksonville. And so we provide career, financial, and income support coaching to the unemployed, low to moderate income families. So anyone that is interested in career or education pathway, anyone that want help, with the financial coach or financial counselor, we are there. We work with budgeting, savings, work with those who are interested in reducing their debt and increasing their asset. Our goal is to make our families as financially healthy as we can.
Yeah, and this is one of several financial opportunity centers. Is that right?
Yes. So we have about 4 active financial opportunity centers here in Jacksonville, Florida. We have Lutheran Social Services Steps to Success. We have Operation New Hope, which is reentry. If we know that's the reentry program, they are also an FOC. We have
That's reentry for returning citizens
for returning
who've been
citizens from
incarcerated.
prison. Yes, and we have Family Foundations. They do a lot with housing counseling and mental health. And we also have Potter's House CDC, and so they also are one of our FOCs. FOCs, like she said, is a trademarked entity from LISC Jacksonville. You have to be doing all 3 of those services in order to become an FOC for LISC.
So let's talk about the need in Jacksonville. There was recently a list published by Wallet Hub about the most financially kind of stressed cities, and Jacksonville was number 10 on that list. So what is this? What are the special challenges that present to Jacksonville residents? What is the financial distress that we're experiencing?
It definitely is around ownership, home ownership, and rental. As we all know, there is no legislation that stops a landlord from increasing your rent, whatever amount he or she wants to increase it annually. And so what we're seeing is that, again, a lot of that income is more than 50% of your income is now being on your housing, whether that's mortgage or rental, because of high interest rates, mortgages going up. And so that is financially strapping people. And it's a major cause of why we don't have as much discretionary income. And again, people are just feeling hopeless. And so the only thing that they feel they can control is spending on things that I like, right? So unfortunately, what happens is they're paying for what they want and then begging for what they need.
Inga, I want to ask you about it's a little bit counterintuitive, this kind of spending. Obviously, there was an article in Psychology Today where they said it's the equivalent of saying, I'm tired of getting punched in the face, so now I'm going to punch myself in the face, right? So you've got people who have maybe diminished economic prospects and yet are harming themselves in a way. So talk to us a little bit about the psychology of that kind of spending.
It's hard because when you look at the future and that you don't really see a way out to make your future better, you have 2 options. I can do what Dr. Chester said. Let me just get it together, put a budget together, make sure that I have some resources to buy a house. Or you can say, that's too hard. I cannot do that. I'm just instead going to go and spend my money, and who cares what happens afterwards? I'm already in the hole. Just let me make the hole bigger. They just don't see that how I can get out and make my situation better, and say, just let it go.
It must be harder, though, when you're talking to young people, especially like your students, who are very aware of the perils of things like climate change. And I think look at that as an endpoint that they're going to be living through, perhaps not happily. And it maybe doesn't give them a idealized version of a future to aspire to.
Or it's very far from idealized version at this point. And it's surprising because when you actually look at the economic data, you look at where the US is right now compared to some other points in life, the economy, at least on paper, is good. There is nothing wrong with it, but that is not the perception most people have. And the combination of I don't have money now and the world is not going to be here in 50 years leads to so much spending right now.
And let's talk about the economic realities just briefly. I mean, you know, as you say, on paper, inflation's under control. The employment rate is pretty low. Projected growth in this country is better than kind of the other G7 economies around the world.
The
So,
stock market's through the roof, like life is
Yeah.
supposedly good.
yeah, but grocery and housing costs, as Dr. Chester said, these are sort of the cornerstones of a consumer's experience, and those remain really, really
Mhm.
unaffordable.
And they also went up like crazy in the last 4 years.
Mhm.
So if you compare Jacksonville in 2020 versus 2022, you saw a huge increase in housing, particularly, that led to a lot of the people feeling like I don't have enough money to pay my rent.
Does your approach to educating students about financial matters or teaching them financial literacy, has that changed over the years?
It has. The topics we address right now compared to 15, 20 years ago when I started teaching are quite different. It used to be that everybody is expected to go to college, or at least the students who are in college are expected to finish college and then buy a house and have a good job. And now it's more about maybe I'll never buy a house. Maybe I'll move to a different city to be able to afford to buy a house. There was a lot more mobility talking compared to before. And there is way more emphasis on we have to budget for retirement and for the future because it's not just a given anymore.
Yeah. What about the impact of something like doom spending on the economy? I mean, does that keep the economy hotter or inflation more of a risk when people are doing that kind of purchasing?
It did in 2021 because we all, or not all of us, but a lot of people got extra money, money they didn't need, and now they started spending this money, and this led to the inflation being even higher than it was the year before.
So, Michelle, let's talk about the kind of pre and post pandemic realities for your clients. How have their perceptions changed? How have their spending habits changed?
Their spending habits have changed drastically. So we're post COVID now. So a lot of our clients are, returning back to work, but the cost of living is still, rising. The cost of gas, the cost of childcare. We hear those type of things all day long. Can't pay my childcare bill along with purchasing gas and groceries all at the same time. And so going back to what Dr. Chester stated about the cost of rent and mortgage, our families are just really struggling right now during this season. I know for some things might look well, but for the families that we're serving, they're struggling. They're wondering, what next month is going to bring. And we know this is the holiday time of the year where, purchasing increase, and it's Christmas time, it's Thanksgiving time, and we're having a lot of clients calling us, even today, where can we buy food, because I just don't see myself getting out of this anytime sooner.
When you're talking to clients that have a diminished income or on some sort of, disability um, supplements, when they're moving into a season like this, is there anything particular that you advise them about how to approach it? I mean, people do want to be able to give gifts to their children. They want to be able to share some of that like holiday joy, but it's obviously much more difficult when you can't afford basics.
Right. We recommend that they do things most the less expensive way. You can't buy tennis shoes this year, but maybe next year. We also tell them to recognize them on their birthday. And so during the holiday time, you won't have that heavy burden that you must purchase this or you must, buy that, for your children.
Yeah.
Mm.
And are there services that your clients connect to during this season that kind of help them, outside agencies or anybody that, helps provide?
Yes, we have a plethora of services that we connect with, community-based services that we can send our clients to help with, whatever their needs are. But I do want to mention that during this time of the year, we stress to our clients the importance of staying on their budget and staying with their budget and living within their means, if not beneath their means. We all know that this time comes every year. We stress a lot about, having savings, emergency savings, and just making sure you stick with your budget and just to be disciplined.
So, Dr. Chester, let's talk about some approaches or solutions if people are finding themselves in this cycle of doom spending. Um, what are some of the basics that you advise And anything targeted, I guess, directly towards this particular kind of spending interaction?
So definitely, like I said, most times people are not cognizant of what they're spending their money on, how they're spending it. So what we try to do is, one thing you can do is keep a diary. Let's keep a spending diary. Let's look at what we're spending, while we're spending it, how are we feeling, right? Was it something I saw on Instagram or TikTok, right? That impulsive spending. Or is it that I was feeling bad and I just wanted to feel better and I purchased something? So doing a diary, a spending diary is great. Um, Finding alternatives to spending. When I feel like spending money on shoes, well, why don't I just pick up the phone and call and speak with a girlfriend about, hey, let's have a conversation. Let's just go window shopping. Let's not purchase anything. Let's talk about our goals. So replacing that that want for a need. So here it is. I want these shoes, but I need this money for some things. And so making sure you're showing discipline, just understanding that discipline is about simply putting off what I want now for what I want most. And so it's always keeping that in mind. What is it that I really, really need as opposed to what I want? So the diary is one thing, understanding what am I feeling? What are the emotions I'm feeling when I'm doing those spending? And having someone that you can talk to, having someone that you can call and talk you off the ledge.
Talk about the importance of goals too. I had some friends many years ago that were saving to go on a year abroad, and they were going to be traveling in some less expensive places. They weren't going to London, but every time they wanted to buy something like a $15 shirt at Target, they would take that money and put it aside.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
it actually, accumulated a really significant amount of money. It allowed them to do this trip, kind of a frugal trip, but a
Yes.
year of just, not working and traveling.
And just right, like you said, not spending on a want immediately. One thing that some of our FOCs do, one thing that Lutheran does really well is we have a match savings program.
Mm-hmm.
So many times what happens is we have banks and different funders who will match their savings. And so we have them start savings accounts, and like you're saying, instead of spending that money there, if you put that money there, just think about at the end, you're going to be matched. And so that's one,
That's great.
it is great.
And that's like money matched just by philanthropic
Yes.
interests in the community.
Yes.
Well, through our bank, some of our funders, our philanthropy, through our national LISC office that we do through our FOCs.
Oh, that's a great
It's
program.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, we actually had 19 clients to participate in that program, and all of them were successful.
Oh, that's terrific. Inga, what do you propose as strategies when you're, I don't know, talking to your students?
Well, students or clients. So one of my rules is the 48-hour rule. I don't care what you want to buy. You'll put in your cart and you'll wait for 48 hours before you're allowed to purchase it. And in most cases, people will not go back. Like you mentioned before, like I just forget about it. Like you'll pretend shopping here, but it still gives you the same dopamine of putting your things in the cart and making you feel like I can afford to do this. I can do it. Nobody's stopping me. But most of the time you realize 48 hours later that you really do not want to buy this.
Hmm.
Another way is to look for other sources of dopamine. Like what else can you do that's going to make you feel like you have a fulfilling life? And there is really no better way to get that done than physical exercise.
Mm.
So every time you feel like you want to buy stuff, instead go run around the block.
Take
and
a
you'll feel
walk.
so much better. Yeah, take a walk.
I was looking on your Instagram though. I mean, you do a lot of financial diary, online where you talk about conversations you've had with your kids about
Money,
spending. But you also celebrate small purchases as well sometimes, and allow yourself to, buy that latte or, stuff like that.
Yeah, it's a balance because you can't. Nobody wants to live feeling like they cannot spend money. Like I don't even like the word budget because it's restrictive.
Yeah.
Instead, it's a plan. Okay, it's okay to spend. Like I tell my clients, I don't care what you spend money on, but this is the amount we got, and you don't have to tell me, but you have to stay within these budgets. We do the same with my husband. We have a limit, and you can do whatever you want with it. And then it becomes what is important to me. What do I value here? And to somebody, it may be an expensive purse. To me, it's never going to be that. To me, it's going to be a trip or something I do on the weekends. So it's really up to each person, but having this thought about what is important to me and spending for that makes you feel much better.
And does that look like something that you've actually just written out as a document for your family or for your clients?
I actually have a book I wrote for my students called Mastering Money, and in it there's a chapter where that goes you through an exercise, how you rate all your purchases, what you decide, how you make your life, at the end of the month to align with what you believe is important.
Talk about rating your purchases. I've not heard of that before.
I came up with it, so I don't know how legitimate it is. But you pretty much go for all your transactions, and it's really easy if you use credit cards or debit cards, because you can just go for your bank statement and you rate every single purchase from a scale of 1 to 10 for a month, and then you get rid
In
of
terms of what?
how happy it makes you afterwards.
Mm.
So you give yourself 3-5 days before you come back to it, not immediately. And then you come back and you cut everything that's a 1 to 4. You don't spend money on that anymore next month.
Hmm.
And then in the end, if you do this consistently, you'll end up spending only on 8s, 9s, and 10s.
And you're talking about things besides like gasoline,
Yeah,
right? Which I'm not gonna
gasoline
feel
is not
great
making
about.
me very happy.
Yeah.
So that's not those purchases you have to make.
Not
you just
needs,
not
the
needs.
wants.
It's
The
wants.
wants.
Wants like that latte that you're doing or that shirt at Target.
That's so interesting. Does
Yeah.
that sound like a strategy that would be useful to clients?
I think so,
I
and
think
and
so. I
I
believe so.
yeah, and
Gonna
I
steal
love
that,
that
Michelle?
plan and not
I
budget,
will.
right? Because
Yeah.
it does take away that restrictiveness of it, saying, "Hey, this is a spending plan and not a budget."
Yeah.
I like that too.
Well, Dr. Chester, Inga Timmerman, Michelle Hughes, thank you all so much for being here today and talking about it. Really appreciate your expertise.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.